You guys remember that really awful IGN review of Xenoblade Definitive Edition? If not, let me just trigger your PTSD here and jog your memory real quick.
You spend a lot of time with Melia, one of the weaker characters from the main campaign, and two new, highly irritating Napon named Kino and Nene. Most memorable cast of characters, whether it's the lovable meathead Rain or the stoic and inscrutable Duncan, each one even when the wonky writing or grindy stretches of gameplay otherwise bog down the adventure. Of course, characters can still get on your nerves by literally never shutting the hell up before, during, and after combat. You'll hear the same tired lines way too often. While those improvements are great, this remaster doesn't go far enough elsewhere, opting to maintain a lot of outdated mechanics. Life improvements make this the best version of Xenoblade Chronicles we've ever had.
Yeah, it's a really terrible review that focuses on a lot of stuff that really just doesn't matter, pronounces multiple things wrong, making you wonder if the person's even played the game, and of course insulted some of the characters that a lot of people love. A lot of people were mad at this, of course, and many called it the worst video game review ever. Well, let me tell you, my friends, that was not a true statement. I was sent a video a few days back that is easily the worst video game review I've ever seen in my entire life. It makes IGN's review look like a masterpiece by comparison. It was so bad I got inspired to make this video, and today I really just wanted to take a look at this review and some other reviews from the series that are pretty laughably bad. Let's reminisce and take a trip to the past here. Now, I don't know if you guys remember G4 Network and X-Play, but it was basically a television show about video games during the early 2000s, and during these shows, they'd often review video games.
So you like Xenosaga?
Yes.
What the is your problem?
Now, unfortunately, there was no YouTube dislike bar back in the day to truly express how awful some of these reviews were, but let me just tell you, this review of Xenosaga Episode 3 is truly the worst thing I have ever seen. You don't even have to play this game to understand why it's so bad, and I'll be happy to talk about it, so let's get into this.
We must correct the errors.
Yeah, that's the ticket. Really breathe in that pungent corpse musk. Really savor the smell. Now make a creepy, disturbing comment.
She smells good.
Perfect.
All things considered, taking a line from the game and joking about it out of context at the start isn't that bad, but the problem is she keeps this tone the entire review and tries to undermine the game with it.
Xenosaga Episode 3, also Sprach Zarath... Wait, how the hell do I say that? Zarathustra? Okay, whatever. It's the third and final entry in a series of long-winded, poorly named role-playing games.
It's no good!
Ah, yes, just what I look for when I decide whether I like a video game or not. Does it have a long title that is poorly named? Also, it would have taken like 10 seconds to look up if it was German, but I digress.
But for those of you who didn't play through the incredibly long first two installments, you should probably know two things. The first is that there are way more cutscenes than gameplay. Impatient people beware. This is a title for watching, not for playing.
Understood.
I don't even know where to begin here. Apparently the first two games being 25 to 35 hour RPGs makes them incredibly long. That's some big news to me, since most people complain if a game doesn't have more content than that these days. Secondly, there is roughly 8 hours and 45 minutes of cutscenes in this game, and it's another 30 to 40 hour RPG. Now, maybe I'm just bad at math here, but that doesn't seem like there's more cutscenes than gameplay to me by any means. And even if she's just exaggerating how many cutscenes there are, the plot of these games is incredible, so honestly, who really cares?
The second thing is that the plot of this series is so twisted and convoluted, it makes absolutely no sense. Here, let's listen in as the lead character, Xion, recaps critical events from the first two games.
Ever since the Zohar was swallowed up by the giant Gnosis,
Uh-huh.
the Gnosis phenomenon has increased in frequency.
Interesting, do go on.
I encountered a group of people called Scientia.
Fascinating.
He said that the Ormus are the rightful possessors of the Zohar.
Oh, for God's sake, we have no idea what you're talking about.
I honestly can't even believe this is a real review that aired on television. There is so much wrong with everything that just happened. Firstly, there is nothing at all that is convoluted about what Xion was saying. The Zohar and the Gnosis are two of the most basic things in this series that you learn in the first hour of the very first game and are consistently important the entire time. Everything else is also basic recap info that anyone who has played the first 2 games should know without issue at this point. It makes you question if this person even bothered to play the first 2 games before making a review of this game, or if they even care about playing this game and reviewing it at all. The overly pretentious tone in this review also exemplified how bad it is, especially when this person has no right to be this pretentious if they can't understand the plot of the games. These kind of reviews and people is why Xenosaga did poorly, and it's honestly so annoying.
I find that rather interesting.
Really? Because I found it rather stupid. Oh, and that German subtitle, that's actually taken from a treatise on philosophy by Nietzsche. In other words, this game is insufferably pretentious.
And you'll never understand its meaning.
Oh, whatever.
Sorry for that awkward cut there, had to cut out where they spoiled something briefly without caring at all. Yeah, it does that too in this review, because why wouldn't they? It's very funny how she calls this game pretentious given the current attitude in this review, but I guess X-Play can't appreciate any games unless they hold your hand or something.
Since you'll spend most of the time watching movies, they may as well be enjoyable, right? Well, there's good news and bad news. The cutscenes in Xenosaga 3 alternate between kick-ass high-speed space combat and interminably boring dialogue.
Well, we completed our mission.
The translation's okay most of the time, but there are occasions where dialogue just stops making any sense.
Oh, sorry.
It's all right. We almost wasted a magnificent dinner.
Magnificent? It's just prosciutto.
Come on, a single thought can change the world.
What the hell just happened?
Yeah, I hate character interaction and boring dialogue too in my RPGs. Why can't we just have fighting all the time? Why would they build up the plot and let the characters develop in this insufferable game? Maybe if I paid attention to this dialogue, I could understand what's going on instead of saying I don't understand the game, but why would I ever do that?
But the real shame is that there's a lot of potential that goes to waste. When you actually are in control, the game turns out to be pretty fun.
Amazing.
The combat system has been streamlined, and the level design is way more interesting than it was in the last 2 games. On top of that, the graphics have been given a nice polish.
Whoa, you look pretty sexy.
I agree with this. The game is fun and it looks really pretty, but why are the only comments about the gameplay of the game itself relegated to the very end and the prior 3 minutes talking about how you didn't understand the plot, so it's bad? How can you review a video game without talking about the game at all? I don't get it.
Alright, what was I saying? Oh yeah, if you liked the last 2, you'll definitely enjoy this one. So, that makes what, like 6 of you?
I'm pretty good, huh?
Well, pretty good is a bit generous. Let's call Xenosaga 3 a 3
She smells good.
out of 5.
I am proud to be one of the 6 Xenosaga fans in the world here. Let's call X-Play a 0 out of 5. This is truly the worst review I have ever seen in my life, and I still cannot believe this made it onto TV. Let's move on to GameSpot Xenoblade X review. It's a bit longer, so we'll only cut to the major points of interest here.
At the same time, X is a prolonged RPG with a predictable story and repetitive, lifeless characters. You hear the same jokes over and over again, and endure drawn-out cutscenes with little to no emotional payoff. Like so many Japanese-made RPGs, serious characters and moments are undermined by the presence of a cute and cuddly sidekick.
Tatsu is no chicken, Finley! Tatsu is Tatsu!
Okay, the plot of X is not the greatest, and Tatsu is legitimately very annoying, but I would never call the characters of X lifeless. I feel like there's a lot of life in Xenoblade X, especially because they're the last remnants of humanity, and that's kind of one of the themes in the game, trying to carve out your purpose in the universe when you feel like you've lost everything that you care about. And I've felt like that was one of X's greatest strong points. A lot of the side characters, the quest, everything like that, there's so much life to the world that you're in, so this is a really, really dumb complaint.
When you aren't wincing at the sight of Tatsu, the game's stuffed animal of choice, you may be reeling from the soundtrack instead, which is filled with low-rent flops that make you reach for the mute button.
Bro, this game's soundtrack is amazing. How can you possibly think the soundtrack of this game is bad? How? How?
And nothing is more frustrating than when your success is left to chance, a sin that occurs in X more often than it should.
This is the single worst complaint about RPGs that exists. The fact that you don't understand the game, and therefore that's the game's fault somehow. There is nothing ever left to chance in Xenoblade X. You have so much control in this game, so many options, And if you think that there's chance involved in this combat system at all, that's just the mark of someone who didn't understand what they're doing and making it a complaint.
You and a party of 3 AI-controlled characters battle in a real-time combat system that offers a lot of depth. But unfortunately, like many of X's finer points, you're left to figure out how it all works on your own.
Or you could read the manual that explains everything in amazing detail, even Overdrive. Or you could even go online and try to find resources, I guess. I don't know, there's so many options here. After this point was made, he basically just goes on to say the exact same thing multiple different times, that there's so many different systems in this game, but he didn't understand any of it, and he had to try to figure it all out on his own, which again can really just be alleviated with the manual. Even if this review did come out before the game came out, the manual is so useful for this game, and no one ever actually looks at it. I don't know why.
The vagaries surrounding X's subsystems can be frustrating for ambitious explorers. Nothing is more confounding than X's mission structure. Sometimes you're required to arbitrarily explore a certain amount of land, or collect a certain number of items in order to access the next chapter of a story. X already has so many things for you to do, that the last thing it needs is missions that pad out the story unnecessarily. You often don't have enough time to do the things you'd like to do, let alone enough time to flounder around completing random tasks just to move to the next part of the plot.
I feel like the entire appeal of X is just all of the content and things to do in the game, all of the side quests, all of the world building, all the exploring, everything that's just not related to the plot. So why is it such a big deal that you have to do some things just to advance the plot, when the entire appeal of the game is just the huge vast world Mirror is, and exploring it and doing all these amazing side quests and building everything? Why is the plot the important thing, and why are we complaining about how the fact that we can't advance the plot unless we do some other stuff? It's not that grindy, it's not that bad, it's actually a lot of fun to do, so this is such a dumb complaint to me.
X is a grand adventure that satiates your appetite for exploration and combat in ways that few games ever do. But because getting started is half the battle, it's an experience reserved for dedicated players who have the patience and energy to unearth its greatest treasures.
Now this review is a great example of why review scores are very meaningless. He spent half the video talking about criticisms and negatives of the game, and while he did say some positive things that I cut out for the sake of time, much of this video was negative and he had a lot of complaints that should drag down the experience greatly, so I don't understand how this game got an 8 unless he just really liked the presentation and plot or something, which he didn't talk about that much. Regardless, though, this was not a great review once again. It's probably worse than the IGN review if you ask me, just based on some of the complaints and structures of it, but it didn't insult everyone's favorite character, so people liked it better, I guess. I don't know. Now, I could also show GameSpot's Xenoblade 2 review that got a 7, but this Kotaku review is even funnier than that, but unfortunately it's text-based, so bear with me as I'll have to read a lot of it out loud. Inelegant and tedious, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is the anti-Nintendo game. In a year full of triumphs for the spunky Switch, this massive role-playing game is a disappointment. What a statement right there. The anti-Nintendo game. That's quite the bold statement. This basically means it's like the worst Nintendo game ever created, according to this guy right here. I didn't love Xenoblade Chronicles, a 2010 Wii game from veteran director Takahashi Monolith Salt. I hated the boring do-gooder Shulk and his dull screeching about the power of the Monado. Oh man, we gotta throw in the jab to Xenoblade 1 in this review right here. I had hoped the man behind Xenogears, one of my favorite games of all time, might have returned to form. I mean, Xenoblade 2 and Xenogears have a lot of the same themes. I don't know why you don't like this game if you like Xenogears, especially because Xenogears gameplay has not aged well at all, and this game has amazing gameplay. Okay, it just talks about the plot here. We have to make a comment about how Pyre is a voluptuous woman, because why wouldn't we? And then, as the game goes on, cracks start to show. Xenoblade 2 will barrage you with combat tutorial full of proper nouns, telling you to perform driver combos, elemental combos, and fusion combos, among many of the game's other confusingly named mechanics. You know what? I can honestly give him this point. The tutorials are kind of poor. You can only see them one time throughout the entire game, so a lot of the understanding the system is going to take some experimentation with the system itself to see how it all works. Or, if you want to do what his suggestion is here, you can look up some YouTube tutorials from your good friend Anel, who has everything you could possibly want to know about Xenoblade Chronicles 2 uploaded onto youtube.com, so just subscribe to Anel and you will have no issues whatsoever. Anyway, the next part here, he talks about how sometimes you can enjoy combat, but it's very chaotic and messy, and every battle takes way too long. No, it does not take way too long, but you actually have to understand combat to make it not take too long. So I guess that is a point in his favor. If he didn't understand the system, I could understand why battles would take a very long time. This next paragraph's not that interesting, it's just comparing it to Breath of the Wild because Monolith worked on it. Early on, you'll meet Tora, who is one of the most irritating characters I've ever encountered in a video game. Tora is a Napalm, which is sort of like a cross between an egg and a minion. Wow, this dude hates Tora. I actually like Tora a lot. I think he's a really good character, but I guess other people think he's annoying. That's kind of sad. The other characters aren't much better. Well, I guess every character in this game sucks. It's not just Tora. Everyone sucks. Thanks to an unsettled script that stomps all over even the most interesting story scenes. We'll beat them with the power of friendship, cries Rex during an early battle. Well, yeah, I guess that's true. A lot of the battle lines are repeated, but that's the same in all of the games. I don't really think that's really a big deal. It's not really a reason to hate any of the characters, so I don't really understand what the point of that is. During one early dungeon, you'll fight a dozen battles with guards who repeat the same 2 lines every time they swing. Think you can take me? And don't forget me. Oh my gosh, I can't believe they patched this out. This is the reason it got patched out, this article. Oh, this is so upsetting. Those are great lines. Oh. How can you hate that? It was so charming. I don't understand. I don't understand, man. The story takes some interesting turns in the latter half of the game when Xenoblade 2 starts asking questions about memory and human nature. Blades can't die, but when their drivers are killed, those blades will revert to a reset state, forgetting everything they knew before. Yes, this is actually one of the coolest parts of the game. I really like this part of the game. Nothing to complain about here. Xenoblade 2 is also plagued with technical issues. Now, maybe this was true on the review game patch. I don't actually know this, because of all the subsequent patches don't have nearly as many technical issues as far as I'm aware. So maybe this is actually a valid complaint for the time that this review was written in, so I won't have too much to say about that. Okay, Xenoblade 2 consistently displays a frustrating lack of respect for the player's time. Everything takes significantly longer than it needs to, in part because the game contains such an overwhelming number of features. It's actually a shorter speedrun than Xenoblade 1, and there's not actually that many things that take a long amount of time unless you just want to grind everything to the max. It can take dozens of minutes to navigate the clunky menus. How? The menus are so easy to read. I don't understand that complaint. The mini-map is vague. No, it's not. You can easily see where everything is. Much clearer than X in that regard. Often feels like it's withholding information. There are larger maps. You just press down on the control stick and you can see a larger map. Battles are long and tedious, and many of them dragged on even after I'd fully learned how the combat system worked. Okay, no, you did not learn how the combat system worked fully if the battle still took a long time. I'm sorry to tell you that, but no battle should ever take longer than 3 minutes in this game, ever, if you know what you're doing. And when I wasn't grinding levels or taking care of some of the game's maniacal side quests, boss fights often prevented me from making any progress. Now, this doesn't make sense. You should never have to grind levels in this game either. You can get so much experience if you know what you're doing with the combat system, with the overkill experience. This is a really, really dumb complaint, too. Here, we're complaining it to other RPGs where they're talking about making interesting decisions. I don't understand the point of this paragraph either. It's completely unrelated to Xenoblade 2 as a game. So now we're complaining about aux cores, we're complaining about art points, skill points. The game is loaded with that kind of bloat. You'll have to collect and use weapon points to boost each character's arts, skill points to buff their affinity abilities, and pouch items to temporarily buff their stats. All of these proper nouns compound and congeal into a big mess. There are many upgrade systems, but few interesting decisions. It's all wit and no debt. I mean, you're ignoring the fact that the blades are the biggest customization in this entire game, and none of these are really bad. I always think that more customization options are really good for making the system feel better and just giving you more options to use in combat. It's a lot of that, actually. It's not all width. I don't understand. This is such a terrible paragraph. This is such a terrible paragraph. And now we're going to complain about the weapon system even more, even though it's not really that hard to use at all. Complaining about Tiger, that's a little bit valid. I can understand that. I mean, Tiger is kind of stupid, but I mean, at the same time, it's not really a big part of the game either, so it doesn't really warrant its own paragraph as why the game sucks. And the deeper the game goes, the more tedious it becomes. There are core crystals out in the wild, each one corresponding to a new blade that you can summon, and when you go in the menu and choose to bond a core crystal with the character, you'll have to sit through a long animation. Okay, this got patched out, and I'm so thankful that it did, because this is actually a valid complaint. The long animation thing is really, really bad. I do agree with that, and I'm glad they were able to patch out and fix a bunch of other quality of life changes in the game that probably were not present when this article was first written, to be fair to this article itself. In a similarly strange decision, Xenoblade 2 decides to fragment some of your party's experience points. How is the end system bad? The end system is such a good system. How is this bad? You don't want to overlevel yourself. You want to have a challenge. I mean, this makes a lot of sense to me. If you don't want to have all the extra experience applied to your character at once, you have that option. This is a really good setting. The end system is not something you should complain about here. Merc missions are kind of tedious, but they can also be helpful in raising all your extra blades that you don't have equipped in the party, so I actually like Merc missions. But I guess you could complain about that if you keep having to menu for them over and over, so I guess that's kind of annoying. Some of the problems I've outlined are substantial, others are trivial. You could say that again. I think most of them are trivial, honestly. And some of them aren't even problems, it's just you being bad at the game and not actually understanding the combat system. Here he praises the music and the region and the world, so that's actually a good thing. I actually do appreciate that. It's too bad there isn't a better game beneath these lovely trappings. Like the world of Alres, there's very little holding up Xenoblade 2. It is dull, dreary, overly complicated, and unconcerned with wasting the player's time. Life is just too short for that, even if you don't live on a sea of sinking clouds. Yeah, this review isn't great either, and a lot of these complaints are laughable. Honestly, I love looking at stuff like this because it's actually really funny to me to see stuff like this because most of the time these reviewers really don't care for the games they're playing, and it makes them not the best option to really review the game, so you get a lot of really bad reviews like this. Anyway, I don't really have much else to say here, so thanks so much for joining me on this wonderful journey into the past. If you like this video and want to see more content on the Xenoblade series, make sure to subscribe, like, comment, and look forward to everything else I have planned in the future. Thank you guys so much for watching, and have a wonderful day.